Thurgood Marshall, his dissent, and that's what I'm going to read. Fully recognizing the implications of Rodriguez, the name of the case, Justice Thurgood Marshall was apoplectic. More than 40% of black children, 14 and under, lived with families below the poverty line, as compared with about 10% of white children. Under those circumstances, Marshall feared, African American children wouldn't stand a chance. The decision, he wrote in his dissent, could only be seen as a retreat from a commitment to equality of educational opportunity, as well as an unsupportable capitulation to a system which deprives children of the chance to reach their full potential as citizens. He was simply dumbfounded that the majority would acknowledge the existence of widely disparate funding for schools across Texas, but then, instead of focusing on the cause of that disparity, clumsily pirouette to all of the state's supposed efforts to close the gaps. The issue, Marshall explained, is not whether Texas is doing its best to ameliorate the worst features of a discriminatory scheme, but rather whether the scheme itself is in fact unconstitutionally discriminatory. Moreover, he found it the height of absurdity that Texas could actually argue that there was no correlation between funding and school quality. You can't make this up. And then, from that faulty premise, deduce that there were no discriminatory consequences for the children of the disadvantaged districts. He was equally unimpressed with Texas's tendency to parade before the justice the stories of children who had excelled despite living in under-resourced districts as some sort of proof that funding was irrelevant. That a child could excel even when forced to attend an underfunded school with poor physical facilities, less experienced teachers, larger classes, and a number of other deficits compared to a school with substantially more funds, Marshall barked, is to the credit of the child, not the state. But Rodriguez placed the onus solely on the backs of the most vulnerable, while walling off access to the necessary resources for quality education, and played beautifully into the colorblind post-civil rights language of substituting economics for race, yet achieving a similar result. The simple truth was that, by virtue of the sheer demographics of poverty, Rodriguez would have not only a disparate impact on African American children, but also a disastrous one. I know, sobering. And I then move into the war on drugs, because it has so warped American society in ways that are so profound. And so I walk us through how the war on drugs emerged. I then walk us through the court cases, the Supreme Court decisions that Michelle Alexander in The New Jim Crow so beautifully laid out. And then I begin to lay out some of those consequences.